Next from Chicago, our contributing correspondent Jeff Berkowitz talks with Republican House member Jeannie Ives as they discuss pension reforms and the recently passed concealed carry law. This runs about 30 minutes.
You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game, and we will be doing lots of politics and public policy. I should emphasize public policy this evening because we have as our guest State Rep Jeannie Ives, and she is, of course, a Republican state rep from Wheaton. Okay, everybody knows where Wheaton is. We don't air there, but you know, it's like, say, way west. Okay, it's the land of Congressman Peter Roscom. He was the state senator from there, right?
That's
you know
correct.
Pete?
Yes, I do.
Or we call him Peter, actually. Nobody calls him Pete. I don't know why I said that, right?
No,
Peter.
I don't know why you said that either.
I don't know. Now he'll never do the show again, you see?
Right.
I just instantly make enemies. But seriously, this show, I mean, the nice thing about this, we're taping this show July 28th.
Yes.
So you've done Newsmakers. What's that little show on Comcast or wherever it is or something?
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Very good about
Who's that guy who's on
getting
it?
state reps on it.
Who's that? Who's the guy who?
Paul Lisnick.
Paul Lisnick, okay,
Yes.
I think, right. So you've done Newsmakers, and that was kind of prep for doing public affairs, right?
Don't know, like, I hear this is a lot longer, so.
Yeah, and a lot tougher. And basically, like, when last time you did Newsmakers with Paul Lisnick, right?
Well, I would say actually Newsmakers is kind of tough.
Is it? So when was the last time you did that?
Get your point across in 5 minutes, Jeff.
When was the last time you did that show?
Spring session.
Spring session. So pensions were going on then, and
Yes.
people were talking about where you're going to get legislation.
Yes.
But now it's where the rubber hits the road. It's July 28th. In 2 days, you and your colleagues won't get paid, right?
I guess so.
I guess so, because the government
right.
says you're not doing your work, so if you don't work, you don't get paid. You don't quibble with that, do you?
I'm not quibbling with that one bit.
Okay. So, but all I'm saying is you could talk about making news. If you would just tell people, okay, tell people in like 25 seconds, what is the problem with state employee pensions and why can't it be fixed like right now by August 1?
Well, we have over time promised benefits that we can't afford. That's the biggest problem. There's been promises made that cannot be sustained.
Okay.
Detroit's a perfect example of that. And the reason it's not going to get fixed within 3 days is because the powers that actually are in charge can't agree on a solution.
And the powers that are in charge, because I said this, people who watched this show last week, we had Andrea Zopp on. She is President and CEO of the Chicago Urban League. You know Andrea? You know of her?
I do not know her.
She's on this Chicago Public School Board of Education. She's one of
Okay.
the 7 board members. And so I said to her, like, okay, why can't the pension stuff be resolved? But she's a smart person, and she's on, the board. She's going to want to say, and she says, well, it's the legislature hasn't come up. So I said, no, you mean that Speaker Mike Madigan and Senate President John Cullerton can't figure it out or won't agree on what to do because those folks have the power. If they want it to happen, it would happen. If they don't, it won't. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. See, Andrea didn't say, we're not going after Andrea. Andrea, you got to tell the truth. You lose credibility. This is what people tell me. If I ever say anything that's not true on the show, 0 credibility. And what we've said is true. It's Cullerton and Madigan. You agree. If they want it to happen, it would happen, right?
There's no doubt.
Okay.
They hold supermajority positions in both the House and the Senate, and everybody knows that they tightly control their caucus and they can get a vote on it if they wanted it done.
And so the simple thing is, as you say, the benefits can't be sustained. The state is making a $5 billion payment exclusive of debt payments.
That's correct.
Throw in debt payments and maybe some retirement health care stuff. We're easily talking $8 billion roughly of the $32 billion GRF budget, or is it now $35 billion GRF budget?
Yeah, it's over $35 billion for FY14.
So we're almost paying, about 25% is going to pensions, right?
Well, just under 20%
Just under
is the number.
Well, if it's 8, whatever. It's between 20 and 25%. It's too much. It's crowding out spending on education, crowding out spending on low-income people who need health care, crowding out all sorts of things that Democrats usually want to do. So you have Democrats fighting with other Democrats. So Democrats say, we want to do this current spending, and then other Democrats say, okay, we're tied to the unions, we've got to take care of that. And so, and since the Democrats are in control, you've got these two. See, it's politics made easy, folks. You don't need a lot of brain power to watch this program, right? Because you just say, you have 71 Democrats in the State House, right?
Sure.
47 Republicans.
He could have rolled off 11 of those and still passed something in the House.
Right, but those 71 can't get agreement, and it doesn't even matter because Speaker Mike Madigan, if he says he wants it, then there will be a majority in the House for it, right?
I think he's got tight enough control of his
Right.
caucus that he can make that happen,
And
yes.
Senate President John Cullerton says if he wants it, he's got 40 Democrats and there are only 19 Republicans in the Senate. Again, simple math. So if Cullerton wants to happen, it'll happen, right?
I guess so. I mean, the House
Right.
separately passed pension reform, the Senate separately passed pension reform, and the bills are far apart.
So why, in your view, because you've been down now in Springfield for about 7 months, right?
Since January 9th, yeah.
You're the smartest person we've ever had on the show because you're a West Point grad, seriously. You know all that engineering stuff that people at West Point have to know. You know economics. You concentrated or majored in economics when you were there. You know math, you know science, and you know politics. You had a brief stint at the city council in Wheaton, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so you have some idea of how this stuff goes, and then you managed to get yourself elected. Did you have to go through a primary to do that when you
Yes,
ran for state
yes.
rep? It wasn't just handed to you, right?
No, the primary was more difficult than the general,
Right.
and that's typical of my Republican
Right.
leaning district.
Okay, so you know all this stuff, and so just tell us, why can't Speaker Mike Madigan reach agreement with Senate President John Cullerton on what to do about pensions?
I honestly think that they're conflicted on where the solution should go and what's constitutional and what's not, and we need to get past that because anything that's passed with pension reform
You
is
think-
going to have a constitutional challenge.
Well, Cullerton's, okay, Madigan has a bill that would, what would it do to the COLA, which you've said, COLA, the cost of living adjustment, that's a major thing that has to be adjusted.
Sure, it's a major driver to the unfunded liability and the unsustainable nature of these pensions.
So
That's
the
correct.
three variables that
right.
people who are not going as far as you are, and will come to defined contribution as
Sure.
opposed to defined benefit, but not to get in the weeds, most people who look at this say, you got to adjust the COLA or cut it out completely,
That's
the
correct.
cost of living adjustment for the retirees, or you have to raise the employee contribution, or you have to lower the retirement age. Those are the variables, okay?
Increase the retirement age.
Excuse me, increase the retirement age, okay? So those are the variables.
Well, there's a lot of variables that can be
But those are the main
pulled.
ones. Those are the main ones.
Those are
And then people
drivers.
generally, I think, agree, you've studied, the main driver among those three would be the COLA, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and so Madigan has a bill that, what does it do? Does it suspend the COLA or does it just reduce the
It
COLA?
reduces the COLA and gives you a particular amount of cost of living increase based on the number of years you worked, and it's capped at the $30,000 pension level.
I mean, if you're making
So-
$120,000, only $30,000 of your $120,000, if you had,
If
actually
you have
had,
a pension-
not making, if you had a pension,
pension.
say, of $90,000, only $30,000 of that $90,000 coming to you would be escalated with a cost of living adjustment, right?
Yes,
The
yes.
others would just stay flat.
And a $90,000 pension is,
Pretty high.
well, it's high, but it's actually, we have about 10,000 employees in the state
that.
that make over 100,000 in
So
a
they're going to
pension-
suffer a
in
lot
pension.
because they're, and how long will, that'll be forever, they will not get an adjustment for the rest of their retired career, right? In other words, if they're not going to, if
Well,
that
they're gonna
law would.
keep getting that
Right,
adjustment.
that adjust, their
Only on the
COLA
first
will only be
30,000
on the
max.
30,000 forever for the rest of their lives, right? Okay. And it will also change the employee contribution, right?
Yes, it has a 2% increase on the employee side to
Okay.
contribute more to the cost of their pension.
And it will slightly do something about the retirement age, right?
Yes, the retirement age is adjusted, but essentially if you're 45 and older, you don't have an adjusted age. It segments it based on 5-year increments as to working you up to 67.
And Madigan, then, in his proposed legislation, if you do all those things under his legislation, there is at least a $96 billion, maybe it's more, underfunding of pensions. How much of that $96 billion gap is cured by his proposed legislation, in your view?
Well, he did have his plans scored
Scored.
by the actuaries, and I think the unfunded liability went away by about $187 billion over the length of the plan, over the 30-year time frame that they're thinking of
Over the
getting to
30 years,
right.
it would reduce by 187, did you say?
Yes,
But
billion,
it's only 96 billion,
well,
so how does
that's
it reduce?
right. Well, you get confused. It gets confusing here too, because that's how much liability goes away over time,
Okay.
over the 30 years.
So when people say 30 billion goes away of the 96, do they mean initially? Or?
Initially,
Okay.
that's correct.
Is
And
that
that's
about, is that what, right,
Do you
what
know
happens
what's
initially?
interesting? Well, what's interesting about that, when his bill was being discussed, is that the thought was that he's taken away about 30 billion initially. Come to find out, it's really down more around $21 billion.
Okay.
And all that does is decrease your unfunded liability back to about the level it was in 2009 and 2010. So is that a solution? Because back in 2010, we had a pension problem too, and we knew it.
So in your point, it's
So
a Band-Aid.
Yes, yes.
And you're saying he's actually acknowledged that on the floor of
Yes,
the
yes.
House, right?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I questioned him on his pension bill on the floor.
You
And
questioned him. You actually spoke and asked questions as Speaker might have.
Yeah.
Like talking to God or something, or what?
not at all.
Not at all.
No, he's very courteous.
Yeah, you
very,
were courteous and he was courteous back?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because people
And-
always say, the Speaker doesn't speak. That's why he's not. I had a 7-minute interview with him about a year ago, and I became sort of a celeb with my colleague Terry Martin from the Illinois Channel, because he
good for
generally, they
you.
say the Speaker doesn't speak. It's kind of
for
ironic. But he was speaking then, okay.
Sure, he was
Okay, but
presenting his own bill on the House floor.
okay. So even though there are problems,
And
you
he
point out
even
this-
admitted his
okay.
bill was only a first step.
And you,
So,
but between the Cullerton bill and the Madigan bill, you supported the Madigan bill?
yes, I did.
Okay. It's not your preferred route, but it's
No.
between those two,
No.
that's the preferable route, because it does more, even though, in your view, doesn't do very much long-term. Would that be fair?
I would say you're going to have the same problem in 3
Yeah.
to 5 years,
Now,
even if it
Cullerton,
passes.
now Cullerton's does even less.
That's correct.
Would it be scored at more like 10 billion as opposed to 20 or something? Or 20 or 30?
I don't even know if it
it's
hit.
that
I don't
much.
even think
Maybe
it hit.
5 billion
I
or
thought it was
something.
5 or 6 billion.
Some people say it got
honestly.
rescored and did better, but I don't know. Okay, but Cullerton, and because he's so concerned, says about the constitutionality, he's modified the Madigan thing so that there's much less, because he's trying to carve out legislation that he thinks the state Supreme Court might say was constitutional. That's his defense, right?
That is his defense.
Okay.
Yes.
So these two, do you think he's really, I mean, he's a lawyer, he's a good guy, I know him, he's practiced law at a major firm. It's actually based out of Chicago, not in Chicago, but I think based in St. Louis, okay? So my point is, Cullerton does know law, he's a smart guy.
Okay.
Madigan's a lawyer, he's a smart guy.
Okay.
But I don't really think Senate President Cullerton is doing this because he's like thinking hard about the Illinois state constitution. He's thinking hard about the unions, he's thinking hard about not alienating people who are the allies of the Democratic Party. And for some reason, he and his colleagues in the state Senate are more dependent on not upsetting unions than Mike Madigan is. Would that be fair?
You know, I'm not going to speak for,
You're not gonna analyze
Mr.
that, okay.
Cullerton,
Okay.
but you know, here's what they're not thinking about is the fact that this entire program is unsustainable. We need any further example than Detroit
Okay.
in the last week.
And that's where you come in, because you're saying you have all
That's
of
what
this.
they're not. They may be smart people, but they need to think smart too.
Well,
in this area.
they do have a short-term outlook, which is keeping power, keeping the Democrats in power. Mike Madigan wants to keep the Democratic majority, so he gets to stay Speaker. He's been there most of the time for the last 30 years, right? Senate President Cullerton wants to stay Senate President, so he wants to keep his majority. So let's be fair.
Sure. So,
And if Republicans were there,
politics do override policy. I would agree.
Right, okay. So a lot of this is not alienating people and getting them through the next election.
Sure.
And maybe doing what's necessary
Kick the
so
can
that
down the road.
the Democrats can keep the governorship in 2014, right? It's part about that. I think they would prefer to have a Democratic governor there. I'm never sure, right?
I imagine they would prefer absolute power and even dictatorship, but
But now you come in, okay? That's why we have you here, Jeannie Ives, okay?
Okay.
The woman who could be the first male
Jeff,
governor.
why are you saying that? I
It
don't
could
know why you
happen.
say that.
I want the credit if it happens, you know?
no.
You don't think?
You
Okay.
know, no.
Okay. But anyway,
Don't see
putting that aside,
It's not on.
but
the
you are
horizon.
smart. You would comp a plea to that. You would agree. You are smart, right? You know policy,
I would
right?
say I know policy.
Okay,
I mean,
there you go.
It's,
And you think it's important not just to talk politics, but talk policy, right? And you think there's a major distinction here between having pensions that are set up with defined benefits as opposed to defined contributions, right?
of course, there's a major distinction.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Well, there are a lot of our viewers may not know this, so don't be condescending to them, but let them
Sure.
know what's that distinction about.
Well,
Tell
the
us.
distinction
Tell 'em.
is about the what's affordable and what's sustainable. So when you have 85% of private sector workers in a defined contribution program and companies one after another moving away from defined benefit into defined contributions, it's because they can't afford it either. And so you've got all this pressure building in Illinois where we've got to look out for it's really good for employees as well.
Okay.
I mean, employees would find a plan that's portable, something they control and not the politicians control, something that they can actually determine where they want their investments to go. It's much more
And
realistic
right now
for
they
both the
can't.
taxpayer
Right
and the
now,
taxpayer.
somebody else does the investments.
Sure.
If somebody else screws it up, the
Sure.
retirees, the state employees, the university employees who are part of the system, the teachers who are part of the system, they all suffer because somebody else didn't
Well,
invest
there's
this
a
right.
lot of uncertainty out here right now. There's a lot of uncertainty for businesses and what they're going to have to pay in taxes in the future. There's a lot of uncertainty for taxpayers. There's a lot of uncertainty for public employees because they don't know if we may end up in a situation like Detroit getting 10 to 30 cents on the dollar, or like what really happened in Rhode Island with Cedar Falls when they went bankrupt, 50 cents on the dollar on the pensions. I don't think our employees deserve that.
So
they
that's-
deserve control and certainty.
And you have
That's what
legislation.
you get.
You have a bill.
Yes.
Tom Morrison has co-sponsored
Yes,
that.
yes.
What number is that?
HB 3303.
Okay. You can't get it. You can't get it voted on. It's not going to be brought up by either Cullerton or in their in control or Madigan. But that's your view. If you go to that system, a defined contribution, that would mean the state employers, the teacher, if it's it could be the university, it could be the public schools, it could be the state as the
Itself,
employer. They would make a contribution of approximately how much?
The employer contribution is 7%,
And the employee contribution
is 8%.
So 15% of that person's income goes into pension each year.
A
and
defined contribution plan.
That's why we call it defined contribution. So you don't define the benefit that these people get.
Nope, but
we
you
define the contribution.
That's
okay?
correct.
And that means a lot of the unfunded liability goes away because the state no longer, once this legislation is adopted, they have their prior obligations.
That's
for
correct.
employees.
And in
They
our
stay
plan,
intact, right?
Yes, in our plan, let's say you had 20 years in, you received 20 years worth of a defined benefit
Right.
pension because we told you we would give you, and then you also receive going forward until you decide to retire. Let's say it's in 15 or 20 years. You have 15 or 20 years worth of a defined contribution benefit. So you get a hybrid. You get both.
But a lot of the unfunded liability goes away because the law is set up so that the employer, the state, will pay out of future income, they will match the contribution. But if that person doesn't work at that year, they've retired before, there's no liability to the
that's
state.
accumulating.
So
That's
why a lot of the under a defined contribution system, a lot of the unfunded liability goes away immediately when the legislation is adopted.
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. All right.
We also do make the same caveat with that Rhode Island did with retirees. We suspend the COLA until the system is whole, and that's based on investment
Nobody
returns.
running for governor of the state of Illinois in the Republican primary, I don't believe any of these four candidates, and there's Brady, Senator Dillard, Bruce Rauner, and State Treasurer Dan Rutherford, I don't think any of those four will say they would favor adopting your program. They say they might favor it in the long run, but they say you have to be pragmatic, and they would all favor the Madigan plan, right?
Sure.
As far as you know.
Sure,
Okay.
and I'm pragmatic too, which is why I took
Well, you did that, okay.
vote from Mr. Madigan's plan, knowing full well that he admitted on the House floor this is just a first step.
And if
the
I said
second step is going a little bit
If
further with ours.
If Speaker Madigan were so kind as to appear on the show, and I asked him, is that right? Did you say it's just the first step? And eventually, Speaker Madigan, you're probably going to have to go to a defined contribution.
He said he would include it in a future plan.
Because you're going to have to follow what State Rep Jeannie Ives,
That's right.
who's going to be the first female governor of the state of Illinois, right, Speaker? And he'd
No,
say
I didn't
right.
say that.
He'd say right.
No, I doubt he'd say right to
Well,
that.
because he thinks his daughter is going to be the first female governor of the state of Illinois. So that we're setting up the race for 2018
not.
could be
No,
you against Attorney General Lisa
I
Madigan
don't
for
know
governor.
where you come up with this, Jeff.
I'm speaking. Who's the guy on WGN? What's his name again? What's the guy who Newsmakers? What's his name?
You know.
Paul.
You know.
I can't remember, I don't know. Paul, whatever his name. So he said, I think it was his idea because he's interviewed you.
No, he
I'm
did
just
not
kidding.
say that.
Paul didn't say that. It was just a joke.
No, I
No,
don't
but
know
I
what
think,
you're
okay,
coming up
seriously,
with.
well, we'll put that aside. Okay. So that's the pension situation.
All right.
And what's going to happen in the next few days? Because you're just going to stop getting paid. Are all of these folks going to say, okay, we got to get paid? Cullerton and Madigan get together, iron out some compromise. You do that, pass the legislation. Mostly, you'll get enough people to sign it, even if you don't vote for it. The Democrats will. Okay, Governor Quinn signs it, then he can run and say we've got reform. Is that going to happen in the next few days?
No.
Tell me. Don't make a prediction.
No, that's not
Will
going
it
to
happen in the next month?
Well, possibly, but
How long can the state legislators go without getting paid?
well, I
For half these people,
I'll
it's the
tell you,
main income. It may not be your main
I
income.
don't know,
but
but
it's- yeah.
my primary job is stay-at-home mom, and I don't get really paid for that. My reward will be later. in
You're
life.
okay, but there are legislators who depend on that income as their main livelihood. They've
Yeah,
got
that's
families, they've got
probably true.
kids. There's going to be a lot of pressure that they're going to put on Cullerton and Madigan to get it done. right?
We all understand it was a populist position for Governor Quinn to come in and say no pay because you didn't do your work. Well, quite frankly, quite a few of us did vote for pension reform. Quite a us did come up with reasonable, good bills that move the plan
But not
forward.
not enough to get a majority.
That's fine, but the thing about it is it's a gimmick. It's
No,
a
but
gimmick
what is
here.
gonna happen?
and-
What is gonna-
no,
don't filibuster. Just tell me what's gonna happen.
He's setting a precedence now that if he doesn't like a particular way that the legislation...
You're not gonna get paid.
Yeah, that we're not going to get paid.
But what's
That's
going to
the
happen?
problem.
Tell me the end game here.
The end game is the conference committee is diligently working behind the scenes to come up with a compromise plan, and I think it includes some of the things that the
And
universities
you think
came
that'll
forward
happen?
them.
That'll happen?
I think that they will
And that'll
come up
get
with
passed?
a compromise plan. I think it will, eventually happen. I can guarantee you that right now, from what I know of things happening down there, it will not be real reform.
Okay.
It won't be real reform. We'll be doing this again in a few short years.
All right, but sometime probably the next month, this will pass. People will stop talking about pensions
I don't know if
for a
it's going to
while.
happen the next month. Could take longer.
2 months? Give me a
Could.
prediction.
I really couldn't.
Jeannie, you must make predictions on this show, okay?
No,
Give me your best shot.
I'm a freshman. I really don't know.
Okay. It sounds like, I can tell the folks out there, it's going to be in the next month probably, okay?
You
There
think?
you go, yeah, okay. You're not going to dispute that, right?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Okay. So, is there anything we've left out that you need to say about pensions before we can go on?
There's probably, you can talk about that.
I know we
for-
could, but is there anything crucial? Because I'd like to move on to the next topic, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to get upset with my guest. My guest basically controls the show, okay? So unless you say it's okay, Jeannie, we're not moving on.
Sure, we can move on.
We can move on.
Sure.
Concealed carry?
Sure.
Okay. So concealed carry legislation was worked on and by both Republicans and Democrats and put forward, and it was passed, and then the governor vetoed it in a big display, and then it was overridden by the legislature. So there's now a new law, concealed carry, right?
That's correct.
And people don't know quite what it is, but the essence of it is that under certain conditions, people can become trained, they can apply for a permit, and in certain times, in certain locations, they will be able to carry a gun that is concealed. Did I get
That's
that
correct.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's all
And
right.
you support that?
Absolutely, I support that.
And do you think it goes far enough? Will people be able to carry a gun concealed in enough situations? People who are proponents of this say, why are you a proponent of concealed carry?
I think that people have the right to own weapons and to protect themselves, and from that standpoint, a lot
Okay.
of times you need to protect yourself, and it's just not in the home. So you have the right to do this.
Would you like to carry a gun in your purse?
I have not decided yet if I'm going to actually go get a concealed carry
But
permit.
you might. I
I
mean,
might.
you're somebody who knows how to handle a
I
gun
might.
because you're a former West Pointer, right? You had 6 years in the active military.
Sure.
You're the last person
But-
I'm going to
but
mess.
the-
I'm not going to mess with you, Jeannie.
Yeah, well, that's good, Jeff.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
the
you're
truth
tough.
is that anybody who is going to conceal and carry is going to think very long about doing that. It's not just something, because if you were to pull out your weapon in the time of need, are you able to do what you need to do with
Shoot
that
somebody,
weapon?
right.
Are you able to do that?
You never. You learn that in the
you-
military. If you display your gun, you want to shoot. Be ready to kill.
Well, that's right. You
Ready
don't-
to
you
kill.
don't-
That's not mince words. Ready to kill, right?
Well, that's true, and I've talked to a number of people that are very familiar with firearms. They're hunters. They target shoot, but
They're not sure
like,
they could
I'm
kill
not
a person."
sure. I'm not sure that I could go there. and actually conceal and carry and do that.
But conceal carry has the benefit. A person who doesn't know if you have a gun, they may be more reluctant to attack a woman, okay, if she might have a gun in her purse because she's legally allowed to carry, and if they know a number do, just that threat of possibly a woman carrying a gun should deter some people, right?
Well, here's what's interesting, Jeff.
And of course, if you can protect yourself by pulling out a gun, that's even more of a deterrent, and that's just generally the rationale for why people favor concealed carry. Did I get that right? Protect yourself and also,
and it's a deterrent. So what your listeners should know about concealed carry is that it's an agreed bill that's been going on for about 10 years. We've been talking about concealed carry for that long, and we're going to have the most training out of any other state in the nation. You have to have 16 hours. It includes range time. It's a $150 fee. You are checked against a mental health and a conviction database about 360 times a year with the FOID card. You have to have a FOID card. You have to be 21. So this is a very reasonable carry bill. It is a shall carry bill. But the impetus for the bill, as you know, came from the court decision, from the Seventh Circuit Court decision. But the basis for that was a case with Mary Shepard, who was working in her church, had a concealed carry permit in 2 other states, but was not allowed to carry in Illinois. She was viciously attacked. Her and another 83-year-old woman were viciously attacked in a church.
We're going to continue to speak as the credits roll.
Okay.
And I didn't mean to interrupt, but we very much want to thank our guest, State Representative Jeannie Ives. Very well could be the first female governor of the state of Illinois.
I don't know why you say that.
Would you consider that?
No.
You don't think it's possible?
I don't think that's possible.
Okay. But anyway, but very seriously, we thank her because she's shown that she has a good understanding of state employee pensions. She has a good understanding of what the political problem is and what the fix is, and we'll see if she's right very soon. Thank you so much for coming here.
Thanks,
Jeannie
Jeff.
Ives,
Thanks
State
for having
Representative
me.
Jeannie Ives.
Thank you.
All right, and you come back. Okay, but we didn't get to cover everything, right?
Okay.
Do we have that as a blood oath? You'll come back?
You've got plenty of other. There's
can't
so
even
many
get
good
that.
candidates
Okay.
out there.
All right, so back to
talk
the woman who wasn't allowed to carry a gun
Sure.
in a church. Now she can in the state of Illinois. Can she have concealed carry in a church if she wants to?
She can, and that was a question brought up to me by
And it might be
my
safer
town
if
hall.
some bad guy pulls out a gun in the church, a woman's there or a man carrying a gun, it's concealed, they whip out the gun, shoot the person, they can save a lot of people.
Sure.
And the critics say, and they can also shoot the wrong person, they could whip it out and just shoot themselves, shoot other people when it wasn't warranted. That's the
Listen,
battle,
we're the
right?
only state that did not have concealed carry, and we have some of the worst crime in the city of Chicago. So I don't
you think the
that-
argument's strong on that
I
side?
think the argument's very strong to allow
we only
people
have
to
like
protect
20 seconds
themselves.
to fix the problem in Chicago Public Schools, school voucher, school choice, right?
I am a proponent of school choice.
Legacy Day, Milton Friedman Legacy Day, July 31st. If people see this, they should know, celebrated around the country, Milton Friedman Legacy Day, Milton Friedman, Capitalism and Freedom, right here,
He
right?
spoke at West
Which we
Point
get
while
from
I
the
was a
Heartland
cadet.
Institute. Nice of
Yeah.
them to give us that. He spoke there.
He
You're
spoke at
impressed with
West
Milton
Point,
Friedman?
yes. Mhm.
Did he get everything right? Did he get school vouchers right?
I think he got almost everything
Did he get school
right.
vouchers right?
I would have to look more into
Would you like to,
specifics.
don't you go, people, we spend $15,000 per kid per year in the CPS. Wouldn't you like to say to the parents, if you're satisfied, stay there. If not, put the $15,000 where you want?
Absolutely.
There you go. You believe in school voucher, school choice.
I do.
All right. So.
Thanks.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.